This ESPN podcast is brought to you by Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com.
Passion, opinion, must-hear radio. This is the Paul Finebaum Show. And now, Paul Finebaum.
Welcome back to another hour. We have been here for a while, but still much more to come. And it's really been an interesting show. The first show after SEC Media Days, and we're a little weary, a little edgy, but raring for the college football season. We'll talk a little bit about the University of Georgia coming up shortly. We'll look back on Media Days. A lot of conversation already today about Saban. Get some reaction to Media Days. We'll go back and listen to Les Miles, somewhat under the radar screen, and also Mark Richt, who is coming off of one of his worst seasons in and at Georgia. Mark Richt told me yesterday that he thinks this is going to be a bounce-back season. Of course, that's how you can contact the show. You can, of course, naturally call us. You can also tweet us at Finebaum. You can email us at paulfinebaum@espn.com. Naturally, the number, same as always, 855-242-7285. Mark Richt sat down with me yesterday. This interview will air later on the SEC network, but we also will talk to him, I believe, next week when he is in Bristol. And I found a man at peace. As some of you may know, Mark Richt is a grandfather, just like Nick Saban. And it was interesting to compare and contrast. Saban was joking about how he was trying to dictate what everyone should be doing in terms of holding or not holding the grandchild, and he jokingly talked about being admonished by his wife. Mark Richt was completely different. His son, who's a graduate assistant on the staff, or actually a volunteer coach, is living with them. And why don't we, before I get too deep into the family tree, let us listen to what Mark Richt had to say.
I'm going on to my 14th season at Georgia, and I was mentioning this earlier. I think that happens for two reasons. I think you have to win enough games to stick around, but the other thing is you need to choose. You have to choose to stay. When I was at Florida State, I had many opportunities to go. Even at Georgia, I've had opportunities to leave, but I chose to stay, and I chose to stay at Georgia before I even before I even came to Athens. When I accepted the job, my goal was that this would be the last stop for me. Whether Todd stays another year or not, I don't know, but he is certainly, if he stays healthy, I think one of the better players in America. I don't think there's any doubt about it, and hopefully he stays healthy, and I see that he's getting into great condition. If we continue to get him in great condition for the season, I think the sky's the limit for him. I really don't care where we're picked. I mean, I think the one year, 2005, we were picked 4th or 5th in the East. The year that we mentioned DJ Shockley taking over for David Green. And then it almost comes back to your quarterback thing, Well, David Green left, and so Georgia's quarterback situation is probably going to drop off. Murray's leaving, it's probably going to drop off. That's what people think. But when DJ came in, he played great, and our quarterback situation, was SEC championship caliber, and I'm hoping the same with Hudson. Obviously, what's important is what happens at the end of the year. Earlier, I got asked that question. I said, I'm not happy to be named number 2. I'm not going to start cheering, we're number 2. No, I think that, I think that in the end it's going to be Georgia.
Mark Richt yesterday talking to media. Good for him, but if you look at the schedule, there's some tricky games, particularly at Missouri. He's versus Florida. Florida needs to beat Georgia. We know that story, the Auburn rematch. But it's a manageable schedule with one exception, September 13th at South Carolina. I don't see Georgia getting past that, and ultimately that may very well decide the SEC East and which team goes to Atlanta. if you look at Georgia, Todd Gurley is going to be the story. He was banged up a little bit last year. I think he's a legitimate Heisman candidate this year with some big-time numbers. 855-242-7285. That is our number here on the program. We'll get your reaction to all of these stories and continue by checking in next with Gay. Good afternoon, Gay.
Hey, Paul. I just was calling because I would like to talk about the comments you made about Steve Spurrier, and that you felt like if he had come to Alabama, he would have won as many national championships as Saban. I know that he's done fairly well at South Carolina. I don't know what you're basing that on, because I really haven't seen that.
Let me jump in here for a second. He hasn't done fairly well. He's won 11 games 3 straight years at a school that is extremely difficult. And Steve Spurrier, I don't know how far back you go in college football, but is one of the best coaches in modern college football history. So, yeah, I think he could, he's on the same page as Nick Saban.
Well, has he won any SEC championships while he's been there?
Well, not at South Carolina, but he won about 5 or 6 at Florida, which is a school I think is comparable to Alabama. Listen, Alabama fans, I get it. I've spent a lot of time in Alabama, but take a chill pill when it comes to Steve Spurrier. I've already said I'm not crazy about some of the comments that he's made about Coach Saban, but don't come in here talking about Steve Spurrier like he just rolled out of bed and has never done anything. He's one of the most accomplished football coaches in SEC history. I mean, I said years ago, this is before Saban's ascended to the throne, that he was the best coach in the SEC since Bear Bryant. So I think that would put him in the conversation. Do I think he's better than Nick Saban right now? No, I don't. You had a caller a minute ago talk about that maybe he doesn't work as hard. Well, we know that. Spurrier admits that. He said the other day that he thinks Saban works too hard, and you heard Saban's response. But I think Alabama fans are letting Steve Spurrier get to them. Whether they're completely getting to Nick Saban or not remains to be seen. I think Saban showed a little bit of that yesterday. But come on now. I mean, you're going to come in here talking about Steve Spurrier not being a very good coach? I mean, that is absolutely laughable. Linwood is calling next. Good afternoon, Linwood.
Hey, Paul. I got to say, give respect where respect is due. I mean, like you said, Steve Spurrier, my God, he's a great coach. You can't get in there and talk about he what he wouldn't do. And with all those, well, he's getting 2A and 3A players. But anyway, he speaks for himself. His record and what he's accomplished speaks for himself. Paul, 2 things. One is I think that we should move the SEC Media Day at least 1 year down to Mobile. There is such a variety of fans down there for the SEC. Majority of them are Alabama, Auburn fans, of course. We are. But there's a variety of them. LSU, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Florida.
You're right about that, Linwood. But, yeah, by the way, it's not moving. But I think Mobile would be on the list. New Orleans would be pretty high on my list, by the way. The SEC likes it where it is. They control it. They know they're going to get the big bang whenever Alabama's there. And by the way, I'm the biggest. I mean, I've got a book coming out in 2 weeks talking about how the SEC is the best league in the country. So you're not going to get me to come in here, taking shots at the SEC. But the SEC, image-wise, likes to present that picture that was disseminated throughout college football today about how we're bigger and better, and you certainly can see it when you see the video. Jimmy is up next. Jimmy is in Tennessee on this Friday afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Finebaum. First-time caller. I've been listening to you for the past year, and I just want to tell you what a crazy, wonderful radio show you have, man. It's absolutely great.
Thank you.
I was just sitting here listening while I was on hold. The last lady you just talked to about Spurrier, and I'm an Alabama fan. You know, I can only imagine Spurrier being coach of Alabama and, making one of those backhanded remarks about Auburn, like he tends to do sometimes, and somebody like Tanner would absolutely blow a gasket. That would just be classic in my mind. But I just want to make a comment about your media days. Of course, I'm in Tennessee, close to Memphis, so I got access to those radio stations. And the interview you did with Chris Vernon was that was great. That's a crazy guy right there.
The one that aired in Memphis, is that the one you're talking about?
Well, the one up from SEC Media Days a couple of days ago.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that guy's absolutely he's just nuts. And a question about the SEC Network. So you're going to show 3 games each Saturday, is that right?
Yeah, that is right, Jimmy. And speaking of the SEC Network, it came out today that Comcast, which I think is the largest cable provider in the country, announced that it will carry the SEC Network as well. So you now have some unbelievably large cable carriers. Certainly Dish is already in. Expectations are that more shoes will drop as we get closer to August 14th, the launch of the SEC Network. We alluded to Georgia as we began the show. We're going to continue on that theme, even though Spurrier tried to hijack it away from our planned idea. But we're going to talk to Gentry Estes, who covers the University of Georgia, about Todd Gurley, about Mark Richt, all of that coming up shortly.
The leading opinion maker in college football. This is the Paul Finebaum Show.
We have talked a little bit about Mark Richt and Todd Gurley in Georgia. They were somewhat of an underreported story at SEC Media Days, but better late than never. Gentry Estes joins us. Always a good conversation. And Gentry, thanks for the time, and let's get right to it. Your view of what Mark Richt had to say yesterday, and where the Bulldogs go from here.
Well, I agree. It was a little underreported, and just not a lot of news out of Georgia's appearance yesterday. You never know going into these things what's going to get said, but Georgia the last few years has gone on that last day opposite Alabama. And when Georgia, especially yesterday, they're the first up in the morning, it just felt kind of sleepy. And, when Alabama's in that place at the same time, it's just a little different for the other team. So I think that, Mark Richt, what I took from it is I think he likes his team. I think the quote that kind of jumped out to me was him being asked about South Carolina being picked at first in the SEC this year, and Rick pretty much sat there and said, no, I think it's going to be Georgia. That's pretty rare for him. You don't normally see him kind of embrace the target like that. So that was really what kind of jumped out to me.
Yeah, Gentry Estes joining us. Certainly, that is true. We talked in an interview that won't air for a while about Todd Gurley, and certainly Todd Gurley is one of the stories, if not the story, from Georgia. Gentry, give us your view of him, his health, and what is expected, and how important he is to this team, which is kind of a silly question, but I have to ask.
Yeah, I mean, he's an outstanding player. Certainly one of the best running backs in the country when he's healthy. And it's amazing. In 2 years, he's rushed for more than 2,000 yards, and I'm not exactly sure how healthy he's been. That freshman year, he played through some minor issues and didn't miss any time. But you heard he's banged up here and there. And then last year, he sprained his ankle, high ankle sprain against LSU in the first half of that game. He ends up missing the next 3 games. And in those 3 games, Georgia lost 2 of them and should have probably lost the third, barely winning in overtime in Knoxville. So I think that tells you right there, how important he was to the team. As soon as he got back, they do go beat Florida, and he scored 2 touchdowns in the first quarter of the game. So outstanding player. He changes their entire offense to have that weapon in there. I do think Georgia, they're going to have some other options at running back this year. Keith Marshall will be back from injury, and they've got 2 5-star signees at tailback, so they will have some other options if Gurley was to get banged up. But he's a different kind of player. I think if he's healthy and he gets the touches that you would have to expect he'll get, he should be in conversation for the Heisman this year, I would think.
Gentry, we all know what happened last year and understand why Georgia struggled because of injuries. Assuming this year doesn't go well, and it's hard for me to believe that Georgia won't have a good record, but let's say it's average, maybe a little surprising, losing a game or two that they shouldn't. Does that change anything with Mark Richt? It's been a while since he's won a championship, but fans still seem to be pretty serene about him and his future.
You know, I would say no, but it doesn't take much. I know you know that, Paul. It really doesn't. It can turn real quick, and depending on what the game is or how it happens. I'll give you an example. That second game of the year, Georgia goes to South Carolina. This is obviously a huge game. People are going to be building that up as a decider in the SEC East, as they have every year, even though it very rarely has been. People are going to point to that game again. 2 years ago, Georgia went to Columbia and got embarrassed. Got beat 35-7 when they weren't even in a game. Worst loss they've had in a while. If they go to Columbia second week of the season and have that happen again, yeah, then I think you have some pretty upset people. It's a front-loaded schedule as it was last season. You go into it kind of expecting certain things, but Georgia last year did pretty well in September. They beat South Carolina, they beat LSU. Then what ends up tripping them up is the October stretch with Missouri and Vanderbilt. Nobody really saw that coming. As you said, injuries had a lot to do with that. But when you go 8-5, I think you do add a little more importance to the next season, especially when Georgia's got a lot of players back. They got a lot of guys back on both sides of the ball. I think when people look at this team, they tend to focus on the fact that Aaron Murray's gone, who's going to replace him. And that is a big aspect of the team, but they do have a fifth-year senior who knows the team, who knows that system, ready to step in at quarterback. If Hudson Mason is able to have a fairly seamless transition and get the ball into the hands of the playmakers Georgia has offensively, should be pretty good on that side, and I think Jeremy Pruitt's going to be an improvement on defense. So when you look at that, I think people are expecting better, and if it doesn't happen, then yeah, I think there'll certainly be some critics.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the schedule is pretty nice. Now, you have Auburn at home, which is a good place to play Auburn, but Arkansas on the schedule, it seems like a gift from the West when you consider what else it could have been. So my sense is, I would think you'd agree that there's a great opportunity here other than the difficulty of playing at South Carolina. You also get Clemson at home in the opener.
Clemson at home early with a younger kind of team after losing some players. So I think that, yeah, that's a schedule that had 9-10 wins at least in it, probably. It's similar a little bit. You throw in Clemson, but it's similar a little bit to how Georgia's schedule was a couple of years ago when, you know, after losing that game in Columbia the way they did, they wound up going to the SEC championship game and playing Alabama for a spot in the BCS title game. So, you know, they were able to rebound, and a lot of that, you know, probably had to do a little bit with the schedule. I think this year, too, if Georgia was able to get through that stretch of Clemson and South Carolina, and you know, a couple of tricky October trips, going to Missouri and Arkansas back-to-back, I think could be a little tricky just because those are longer trips in the league, and they've got to play Arkansas in Little Rock rather than Fayetteville, which might be a little different than what you normally see. But you get through all that and the Florida game, and all of a sudden you could very easily see Georgia sitting there with maybe one loss, no losses, with Auburn coming to Athens.
Right now, I think playing Georgia in a parking lot would probably be pretty advantageous for any school in the SEC. Gentry, always interesting stuff. I appreciate you your coming on, and we will visit very soon.
Okay. Take care, Paul.
Thanks, Gentry. Gentry Estes from Dogs 24/7 giving us his view of the Dogs, and it's a very favorable schedule. There's no doubt that Georgia can get a lot of traction if they survive South Carolina. And even if they don't survive South Carolina, Steve Spurrier said this week, it's not the end of the run, assuming that they could turn the Auburn game to their advantage. Anyway, that is where we are right now as we head down toward a timeout. Love to hear from everyone. The phone numbers are always the same, 855-242-7285. You see, you can always get to us through various means. Callers are on the other side of our timeout here, so we will take it a break and come back and talk to some of you.
Call Finebaum now. 855-242-7285. That's 855-242-PAUL. This is the Paul Finebaum Show.
We're pretty excited about the SEC Network, too. It's coming August 14th. Big news today about Comcast, as we alluded to earlier. Let's get back to the phones, 855-242-7285. A quick check on the temperature at Georgia right there. Let's go to the Reverend up next. Good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, Paul. If you would, for a second, just amuse me and let me do a little role play. I get sick and tired of listening all the time, and I love your show, and I think it's amazing. But you have people that will call in that worship at the altar of Saban and not even realize, really, they look through crimson-colored glasses. So I want to role play a little bit, like we're back at SEC Media Days, and I'm going to ask the question, and I'll answer it as Saban if he would answer it honestly. So the first question, Coach Saban, did Texas offer you $100 million? Well,
no. Am I supposed to answer, or are you going to answer?
No, I'm just going to answer my own question.
Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize.
No, you're fine. You're fine. That way we don't get confused. What is the situation with Texas, and did you get an offer? Well, I did get an offer, but I'm kind of happy where I'm at. Why would I want to jump out of the frying pan into the fire when Texas is similar to the Alabama program? Their fans are crazy. When you lose to your rivalry team, they will tear things up. They will poison trees. They will do crazy things. So why would I want to jump out of the frying pan into the fire and go to Texas? I've got enough problems here, enough stress and pressure trying to win games. If I don't win the Iron Bowl this year, they'll probably be asking for my head. Okay, Coach Saban, I got another question for you. This is another reporter, Paul. What about Steve Spurrier and the comments he made? Well, Spurrier was right. I am probably the best recruiter in the SEC, probably in all of college football, but honestly, I'm not the best coach. Spurrier has took programs like Florida and South Carolina from nothing and built them into winning programs. Furthermore, I said that it's been stated that I have said that I've come back to Bama. I wanted to help mentor kids and to help train them and bring them up. Well, the truth is, I got my ass waxed at Miami when I was in the NFL. Because I'm not Barry Switzer. I'm not Pete Carroll. I can't coach in the NFL and in college. I can coach college football, but then again, I'm still not the best coach. Spurrier is. I might be the best recruiter. Paul, if people would realize that Saban is not a god, he is real, he is flesh, and if he would have made the proper steps of not putting a freshman field goal kicker in the Iron Bowl game last year at the very last play, that kid's an All-American, come out of Calhoun High School in Calhoun, Georgia, an amazing field goal kicker. But he let some kid that was, just missing field goals left and right, and then waits to put all the pressure on this freshman to come in and kick the winning field goal. Come on, Paul. And we say he's the best coaching today, making that kind of decision. It's ridiculous. God bless you and have a good weekend.
Thank you, Reverend. Wow. Amen. I'm sure a lot of Auburn fans are saying right now, interesting call there, one of the more interesting ones of the day. John is up next in Dothan, Alabama. John, what's up?
Oh, my goodness, Reverend. Oh, boy. He
better not pass the plate after that one.
My gosh. I'm serious. Is this guy really a reverend? Anyway, Paul, I'm just wondering if your eyes are as red as Coach Saban was yesterday.
Listen, John, he looked pretty weary. I'm not sure how I look right now, but I think I'm probably holding up slightly better than he is.
Yeah, okay, buddy. Hey, I got a couple of questions for you. One, Paul, how much do you think the coaches use the SEC Media Day to play media games with their opposing coaches? What do you think?
Well, sometimes they do. Now, one trait of Steve Spurrier, he usually trots some lines out. I said this that the line that he used on Saban, I first heard that from him on the field before the spring game in early April. Some do, but I don't think a lot of that goes on because there's such a long time between media days and the beginning of practice and the actual first game.
Okay, buddy. Good question. A good answer, I'm sorry. Paul, okay, you've been wide open for the last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let me ask you a question. How are you handling the stress of your new job and everything coming up in August for you?
Well, one thing this week reminded me of last fall because I've traveled quite a bit this spring, but I had taken a break between I guess the last 2 or 3 weeks. I have really not gone anywhere. But this week reminded me of what had happened and what's about to happen, and it definitely affected me. I think some of you can probably tell today, but it's not so much this week as the season is now underway for us. There are a lot of things going on contemporaneous to the show, and I won't go into them, but there's quite a bit that went on last week, that's going on this week, that's continuing to go on, that I feel. I mean, I feel like the season is like it's September versus July. This is usually a very down time of the year, but on our calendar now, John, the season's underway.
Right. Well, my final question is, and I've got to ask you this: tell me how your lovely wife, Linda, what does she do to help you? Does she advise you, Paul? Or how does she assist you or support you in what you're doing right now?
Well, one thing that I do when I get home, I really shut this off because otherwise it would drive you crazy. I cannot tell you how many times that we've had something incredibly wild going on here, and I'll get home and she'll say, "Well, how'd the show go?" I'll go, "Fine." She said, "Anything happened?" I said, "No." I think the night of the Harvey Updike deal, she said, "Well, how'd it go?" I go, nothing really happened tonight. Because it's just, if you don't, I mean, it's not that we don't talk. I mean, she knows what's going on, but I try to separate it, and I think that's one reason we've done so well. I don't think she wants to hear about the Kevinator when I get home for dinner.
Right, exactly, and you don't want to hear about her things
well, I always try to ask, and because what we do here gets a little more attention than actually doing what she does, which is serving the public and trying to get people better. It's a little more important than whether Todd Gurley breaks Herschel Walker's records at Georgia.
Yeah, that's very well put, Paul. Okay, buddy, take care.
Thank you very much.
Have a great weekend and a restful weekend.
Thanks, John. I hope John did. I know John, and we're friends. I hope John's questions weren't indicating that I sound stressed out today. I don't know why anyone would think I'm stressed out, other than the people that I'm currently working with. Kevin is up next. The Kevinator. Are you going to respond to the Reverend?
Yeah, pretty much I do. But
we'll make it quick, Kevinator, because our patience with you is pretty thin.
Well, man, I was going to tell you about the lady doctor I dated, since you married one, I was going to tell you about the one I dated, but I don't have to tell you about that, Paul. Who offered Nick Saban Texas money? Was it the athletic director? Was it the president of Texas? Who was it, Paul?
Boosters offered the money.
Oh, hold on. A booster offered him some money. Is that what I heard? A booster? Is that the athletic director or the president of Texas? No, it's not, Paul. No, it's not. Now,
I just got through answering that. Yeah, I know that, Kevin.
Yeah, I know you know that. And as far as Nick Saban goes, the reason why that man said what he said at the end of his press conference is because he doesn't read your crap, because you are an opinion.
First of all, Kevin, I don't know how to break this to you, but I don't write for a living, so there's nothing I say that he could read.
Man, your crap I mean the media, okay? Like me. I'm not even a 7
No, Coach Saban definitely does not pay attention to any. Coach Saban definitely doesn't pay attention to anything that's said or written. That's why he reacted so viscerally to Steve Spurrier. The phone number here is 855-242-7285 or 855. I just realized it's 855-242-PAUL. I never realized that, John. I don't know why. Why have I been struggling with the number for so long when it's so easy to figure out? Anyway, much more to come. We've talked about Georgia. We talked about Saban. We've talked about Spurrier. But we'll come back and talk a little bit more about Nick Saban when we return.
Xfinity.
To continue with phone calls, 855-242-PAUL, P-A-U-L. Man, that's my name.
We've been running, seriously, a bump out of break that said
okay, well,
7285-PAUL for
well, thanks for telling me, John.
6 months now.
I mean, you've been doing the show for a year. Congratulations for letting me know, since you've heard me only about 25 times get the number wrong.
Oh, you got called out earlier for not listening to a caller.
Okay.
Now you're getting called out for not listening to our production.
You learn every day when you're when you do this. Daryl is up next in Columbus, Georgia.
I mean, it's 855-242-7285. Why? How can I know that number?
Daryl, how many times do you think I've missed the number?
More than I want to count. I mean, you always struggle with a number. I don't understand why. You know why? I do now. I know, because you never call it. If you dial the number, you know the number. Now, I thought it was P-A-W-L. It's P-A-U-L?
Well, and first of all, I would never call this show.
Well, you called it before. But based on that one call, it would probably be in your best interest to never call it again.
I'm still getting panned for that call-in from a couple weeks ago. I mean, I can't help it that I'm on the beach, sipping a beer in one hand and a blonde in the other, and you're cracking on me?
Well, that blonde wasn't Miley Cyrus, was it?
No.
I don't know. Why are we... Okay, the story at one time was, well, the reason we talk about Nick Saban so much is because Alabama's the national champion. They're the best in college football. That's why we're talking about Nick Saban. And that's no longer the case. Why are we still talking about Nick Saban all the time?
We just can't stop talking about Nick Saban. It's
you can't.
It's a disease.
We can.
No, I don't. I mean, all I did yesterday was entertain Saban for a couple of minutes. That's all.
And when did the Cavinator learn so much? I mean, how does he know so much about Nick Saban? Nick Saban's going to do that. I mean,
Cavinator. If this was baseball, Daryl, Cavinator's definitely going down to the D League or the Pony League. I mean, he is clearly not ready for prime time any longer.
Nick Saban would laugh in his face. I mean, big. Nick Saban would look at him and say, "Son, you're the reason, okay? I'm going to end up leaving Alabama. You people like you are the reason, okay? So just shut up." Hey, what about golf? I mean, it's pretty much over with, I guess, right?
Not yet, but Rory's looking pretty strong.
Oh, how much 4 strokes?
I didn't get a chance to watch any of it today. I was too busy
talking to Nick Saban. Does Terry ever get a word in? I mean, ever? She would probably like her man back. You know what I'm saying?
She knows how I feel about him, and he knows how I feel about her. You've heard me talk about that before.
And he knows how you feel about him, right? Just don't.
That's an uncomfortable topic for me, Daryl.
Hey, the Spurrier Saban, debate. All this about Nick Saban's class. I think I've said it before. I'll say it again. I think they met 4 times. Spurrier spanked him 3. 2 of the 3 spanked him and beat him the last time when he was number 1 in the country, right?
Right.
I mean, just took him in his own backyard, put him over his knee, and spanked him just like the shorty that he is.
Hold on a second. I think Saban beat him
one time. One time.
No, 09. I'm sorry, not 08.
Spurrier never lost to Louisiana Monroe. Not I'm aware of. Never, ever.
Hey, Darryl, Spurrier has never lost to Louisiana Monroe, but he lost to one of the worst Tennessee teams in history last year. Cost him the SEC East. So what are you talking about?
I'm loving it. South Carolina's always good for one loss around first to lose.
A couple of years ago, they lost to Vanderbilt. Remember that one?
I'm going to tell you something. I mean Florida didn't get
that is the Achilles heel of Spurrier at South Carolina, and you could call it
Florida's not getting a whole lot of love. They got the best defense in the SEC. Okay, just keep your eye on that offense is clicking. You better keep your eye on the Gators, man.
No, I like Florida. I've been saying that for months.
Absolutely. And I got one last thing. Okay, it's for all the people out there. I got some good news for them, Paul. They're going to be glad to hear this. Finally, some positive Nick Marshall news. Okay, when they pulled Nick Marshall over last week, I think it was last Friday, a week ago.
Yeah.
Well, he actually had his wallet in his back pocket this time. See you, Paul.
Darryl bringing some just great material there. Shadow up next on a Friday afternoon. If I sound excited because it's Friday afternoon, that is correct. Go ahead, Shadow.
Thank you for taking my call, Paul. I wanted to ask you, if Saban folds this year, as the Shadow has predicted, does it increase the ratings of the Paul Finebaum show?
I think we're in pretty good shape right now, with or without Nick Saban falling.
Okay, so that kind of leads to my second question. So then secretly, Paul, behind the scenes, when nobody's looking, do you really pull for the collapse at the capstone so that your ratings can go up?
Well, Shadow, I don't know how to break this to you, but we don't really. You say ratings. I mean, there are all kinds of different ratings. I mean, we're on in markets all over the country, so we don't fixate on Alabama as being.
You don't.
The key to the success of the show. Now, having said that, Alabama has played a role in the success of the show. I've been very vocal about that, but. Alabama winning the national championship or losing 2 or 3 games is not going to impact what this show does.
Do you think there was a little bit of sarcasm behind the comments of Steve Spurrier saying that Saban is the greatest recruiter in the world, especially...
No, I think that was a very honest statement.
Okay, do you think also that it was honest when Saban just responded basically to that question by saying that Saban said, I cannot make bad players play good. So if he doesn't get the best players in the country, he doesn't do anything with them.
Well, that's a good point. Usually coaches say that they're challenged by developing average players, but you're right. Alabama doesn't recruit average players.
How in the world is it that on the one hand, Saban can be the greatest coach and recruiter in the country?
Shadow, all of you who want to take shots at Nick Saban, good for you, but you're missing the most important thing. And you know what that is?
No, we're not, sir.
You're missing the most important thing.
When they get to
do you know what the most important thing is, Shadow?
When they get to the NFL.
The most important thing, Shadow, is the record. That's how you are judged. If you're in business, you're judged by your bottom line. Nick Saban's bottom line is better than anyone else in the game, and that includes Steve Spurrier. So take shots at him all you want. He's easy to criticize until you get to the bottom line. Nick Saban failed last year. He failed because he didn't win the national championship. That's how he is judged. Steve Spurrier is relishing in an 11-2 season. 11-2. Nick Saban went 11-2, and it was a failure. Figure that one out for yourself. We'll come back. 1 more hour to go. We look forward to hearing from you then.